Hello and welcome to this, the 8th talk in the series, Genesis, the first 3 chapters. I've entitled this talk, Seeds and Stars. God's creative activity extends from the very small to the very large, from seed to stars and beyond. Now I'm going to start on this talk by reading 3 verses from Genesis chapter 1, verses 11, 14 and 15. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the lands that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. In fact, we can explore the universe from the very small to the very large, from the microscopic to the macroscopic. At the extremely minuscule level, we can look at subatomic particles like quarks and leptons and bosons, to the extremely large, huge superclusters of galaxies known as Laniakea. We relate well generally to those which are approximately the same size as us, and less well to the extremely small or the extremely large. I don't have a close personal relationship, particularly on a day-to-day basis, with bacteria or black holes, even if both of them seem to be interesting. Now, this is a very unscientific observation, but it strikes me that there are many more physicists and cosmologists, say, who are interested and have a personal faith than, say, molecular or cellular biologists, who take a much more reductionist view. They look through a microscope and break things down to this very small, rather than taking in the big picture. It's a bit like if I went to the Louvre in Paris and I went to see the famous Mona Lisa. Many queue up to see that. They don't get a microscope and get to 2 or 3 centimetres away merely to discover the pigmentation of the paint or the directionality of brushstrokes. Some will be interested in that, but the vast majority stand back and take in the picture as a whole. And it's like that with the universe. Similarly, if the World Wildlife Fund wants to evoke support from us, they show us pictures of pandas and elephants and rhinos, not algae or bacteria or some obscure insects, as important as they might be. So we tend to relate to that which is the same size as us. Nevertheless, Christian responsibility and stewardship extends to all of creation, large and small, regardless of size and condition. Our stewardship does not permit flagrant disregard for parts of God's creation, like some sort of speciesism. But a few might become obsessive about this and would refuse even to clean off harmful bacteria, in the same process endangering the life of human beings. You see, stewardship needs to involve responsibility and being proactive in management of God's world, not neglectful of it. Our current ability to examine the microscopic and the macroscopic is revealing. It's awe-inspiring. We wonder at the complexity and order of this universe, both large and small, and it's indicative of the divine mind behind it all. Our preoccupation about size can lead to erroneous assumptions. This is well illustrated in an extract from Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a humorous book. Now, speaking of an alien invasion of spaceships from outer space, the spoof story continues like this. The mighty ships tore across the empty wastes of space and finally dived screaming onto the first planet they came across, which happened to be Earth, where, due to a terrible miscalculation of scale, the entire fleet was accidentally swallowed by a small dog. Our assumptions are anthropomorphic in scale, and so we're caught out in that little extract by the mismatch with our own expectations. Size expectations can also lead to flawed thinking. For instance, people speak about the vastness of space, and therefore, being so enormous, surely there'll be other carbon life forms or silicon-based life forms elsewhere in this vast universe. After all, there's such a multiplicity of stars and planets and little systems, there must of necessity be other life forms. But that's flawed thinking. Life is the prerogative of God, not of statistics. And listen, even if there was life forms elsewhere in this universe, as a Christian I wouldn't be worried by that. Because God's capacity to love his entire creation is not diminished by having to love more than one life form. For instance, I have 3 daughters, and when the first daughter was born, loved her immensely, still do. When numbers 2 and 3 came along, it's not as if my love for my first daughter had to be halved and then divided into a third. I don't have a capacity which is limited so that I can devote so much love to one and to another and to another. And God's love is so much greater still. His love is not diminished. He loves all of his creation immensely. He's not like some great grandfather with a goodies jar who has to distribute sweeties and will run out. His love is immense. The other example of poor reasoning brought about by size is because if we thought about the vastness of space, some people can therefore suggest that we are irrelevant, or there's a meaninglessness to our existence, a hopeless abandonment. In 1977, NASA launched Voyager 1 spacecraft, and it hurtles at 64,000 kilometers per hour into interstellar space, and it continually sends images back in terms of radio signals. Now, 13 years after this spacecraft was launched, it sent radio signals and images back. At this stage, it was 16 billion kilometers away from the Earth. And one of the images was very evocative. In an arced ray of light, one could detect a single little blue dot. It was literally a single pixel. And Carl Sagan, the great cosmologist and communicator, noted that this was Earth from 16 billion kilometers away. 4 years after that image was produced, he was speaking at Cornell University, and he gave a lecture called Pale Blue Dot. Brilliant prose, wonderful orator. And it really does repay trying to find the text of his speech and reading it in its entirety. But I want to read you just a small portion from that lecture. It goes like this. Our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this pale blue dot of light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic darkness. In our obscurity, in the vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. It's up to us. Now, 2 years after giving that lecture, Sagan died. He was an atheist and a naturalist. For him, there was no hint of help coming from outside, as he put it, to save us. Now, Voyager 1 is still hurtling through interstellar space. It's 42 years since it was launched, and it's still sending signals over a distance now of 22 billion kilometers. I think it's due to run out of battery life in about 5 years from now. Now, that's awe-inspiring. But the wonder of that is in no way comparable to God's mind-boggling creation of the universe, which dwarfs any puny efforts of humankind. Carl Sagan could look out on space and see pitiful hopelessness. And you contrast that with King David in the Bible, who could look out on space and be filled with praise for God's glorious majesty. It reminds me of a line from Graham Kendrick's quite modern worship song called Servant King. It has this line in it: hands that flung stars into space, to cruel nails surrendered. The greatness of the universe and the minuscule God is interested in it all. He's interested in us. Now, a moment for reflection. Here it is, your moment of reflection or discussion. Does one's smallness in the vastness of the cosmos evoke awe or anxiety? Do you espouse Sagan's despair or Scripture's delight? Why should we do the latter? Well, thank you for watching, and look out for the next in this series, Genesis, the first 3 chapters.